The stars hung peacefully above Earth, scattered like a sea of diamonds across the black sky. For years, humanity believed peace would last. Trade routes were open, colonies thriving, and the Terran defense fleet was more a symbol than a weapon. No one expected war. Not anymore. But everything changed in an instant. Without warning, a burning streak of plasma tore through the silence near Jupiter's orbit. The Krell had come. Their warships were enormous, spiked like predators, pulsing, with blue energy, and cloaked in shadows that swallowed starlight. They didn't send a message. They didn't ask for surrender. They simply opened fire. The human flagship Valkyrie, standing guard near the moon Callisto, took a direct hit to its command tower. The explosion was instant and violent. Metal split, apart like paper. Flames erupted from broken decks. Bodies were flung into space and hundreds of lives were lost in seconds. On the bridge, Admiral Ria Torres stumbled through smoke and sirens. Her uniform was scorched, her face bleeding from a shard of glass. She pulled herself to her feet as red lights flashed and a shaken officer shouted over the alarms. "Admiral, it's the Krell. They've launched a full-scale assault." Her hands gripped the console. "This isn't a drill. Get all systems online. Full fleet response. We're at war." Across the solar system, chaos spread like wildfire. Mars relays went dark. The outer mining colonies sent desperate messages. Krell warships were approaching. Earth's defense satellites lit up with red signals. The galaxy watched, stunned. The Krell Empire had conquered 10 worlds without mercy. No one had ever fought. Them and won. Most expected Earth to beg for peace, to surrender like the others. After all, humanity was smaller, newer, less advanced. But something strange happened. As the fires still burned aboard the Valkyrie, and the wounded were being dragged from wreckage, Admiral Torres stood tall on the shattered bridge. Blood ran down her temple, but her voice was clear, steady, and cold. She looked into the main viewer, where the Krell dreadnought hovered like a dark god above the ruins of Earth's outer defenses. "They fired first," she said. "Now it's our turn." That moment spread faster than the attack itself. Her words echoed through emergency broadcasts, into every colony, every station, every hidden outpost of the human race. People listened, and something deep inside them stirred. Not fear, not panic, but a slow rising smile. On a distant farming world, a retired Marine dusted off his old rifle. In a drifting science ship, a young engineer locked her eyes on the stars and whispered, "Let's show them." On Earth, recruits lined up at enlistment centers before sunrise. Humanity had been attacked. The first shot had been fired. But they weren't broken. No, they were waking up. Earth's skies turned red not with defeat but with purpose. The Krell believed they could strike without consequence. They thought humanity would fall like the others. They didn't understand what they had just done. They had called out the one force in the galaxy that smiled when cornered. That fought harder the worse things got. That refused to die quietly. The Krell didn't just start a war. They woke the part of humanity the stars had forgotten, the part that grinned through. Blood stood up in fire and said, "Our turn." Earth's answer came not with words but with fire. The skies above Luna Base turned bright as squadrons of Terran starfighters launched from underground hangars, engines screaming with fury. Every ship that could fly was armed, fueled, and pushed into the void. Civilian freighters were refitted into warships overnight. Engineers welded railguns to old cargo hulls. The message was clear across every command. If it flies, it fights. Above Mars, 3 Krell cruisers descended, expecting an easy kill. They were met by a wall of missiles. Captain Idris Hale, commanding the TDS Ironstorm, gave no warning. He simply whispered, "Let them come," and opened fire. His ship, though smaller, danced between blasts with impossible grace. Human pilots were reckless, fast, and unpredictable, flying like devils possessed. They twisted between plasma bolts, diving into blind spots, unleashing brutal counterattacks. The Krell, used to slower, methodical opponents, faltered. One of their cruisers exploded in a silent bloom of fire and debris. On board the Ironstorm, cheers erupted. It wasn't just a kill, it was a statement. Across every front, the same story repeated. Earth's colonies refused to retreat. Mining ships on Titan turned their drills into weapons, boring holes into enemy hulls. On Europa Station, civilians fought with plasma torches and mining mechs, locking down hallways as Krell boarding parties poured in. No one backed down. Even children were helping, loading supplies, building barricades, passing messages to distant fleets. It wasn't chaos. It was survival turned into strategy. Admiral Torres, now recovered and commanding from the rebuilt bridge of the Valkyrie II, coordinated strikes with precision. Her eyes were fierce, scanning war maps lit with red markers. She knew Earth couldn't win a war of size. The Krell had numbers, but humans had speed, cunning, and the will to adapt. And they used it. Torres launched what she called Phase Ember, a surprise strike deep into Krell territory. 5 stealth frigates jumped into enemy space, struck fuel depots and communication nodes, and vanished before retaliation. One ship, TDS Whisper, piloted by Commander Kai Voss, flew straight through an asteroid belt to avoid detection. His crew held their breath as the ship weaved between spinning rocks and enemy scans. They hit a Krell command relay, then jumped away just as a destroyer's plasma cannon lit up the sky behind them. That hit didn't just cause damage. It caused fear. The Krell had never been attacked on their own turf. Now their screens flickered with Terran signatures, fast, small, and everywhere. Earth had teeth. More than that, Earth had a plan. But it came at a cost. In orbit above Ganymede, the TDS Haven, carrying hundreds of refugees, was ambushed. Captain Yara Nduku refused to run. Her last message was broadcast to the fleet. "I'll hold them as long as I can. Buy Earth another minute." She did. Her ship went down in flames, but so did the Krell vessel that chased her. That minute she bought saved a whole convoy of medical ships. When Torres heard of her sacrifice, she stood in silence, hand on heart. She knew, she said. She understood the weight. In those dark hours, as battles flared across every moon and planet, a change took hold. Humanity stopped being a target. It became a storm. They didn't fight fair, they fought smart. They hacked enemy systems, used debris as cover, turned failed colonies into traps. The Krell had awakened something they couldn't put back to sleep. It wasn't just war anymore, it was a reckoning. The third week of war brought no pause, only blood and fire. But amid the chaos, the human spirit burned brighter. The front lines stretched thin across moons and asteroid belts, but something had changed in the way humanity fought. They were no longer reacting. They were hunting. Deep inside the Kuiper Belt, a new force took shape. Task Force Revenant, a hand-picked unit led by Commander Elias Rourke, a former smuggler turned war hero. His ship, the TDS Wraith, was fast, small, and deadly. Rourke didn't follow rules. He broke them to win. His crew was made up of outcasts, hackers, mercenaries, and former convicts, all loyal to him because he gave them one thing: purpose. With Rourke in charge, the Wraith became a ghost in the stars, striking Krell supply lines and disappearing before alarms could be raised. In one daring mission, Rourke flew the Wraith directly into a Krell convoy formation and detonated an asteroid, rigged with explosives. The blast tore apart 2 enemy freighters, and before the Krell knew what happened, the Wraith had vanished into a gravity well, leaving behind only wreckage and confusion. Word of Task Force Revenant spread fast. Colonists whispered their name with hope, soldiers cheered when their insignia flashed across war maps, and even the Krell began to assign elite units to try and catch them, but none ever did. Back near Earth, Admiral Torres had turned the old Terran defense network into something far more aggressive. No longer passive shields, the satellites and stations now coordinated real-time attacks. AI-assisted command nodes predicted Krell movements based on old trade routes and patterns, allowing human fleets to strike first. And strike they did. The asteroid fields near Saturn became killing grounds. Captain Idris Hale, still commanding the Iron Storm, led a bold assault on a Krell mothership attempting to land near Titan. Outnumbered 3-1, Hale used Titan's thick magnetic storms to scramble enemy targeting systems. His ships flew low, skimming ice and fire, vanishing into clouds before reappearing with torpedoes blazing. The mothership, confused and overwhelmed, took massive damage and crashed onto the moon's surface in a violent shockwave. Human troops landed shortly after, surrounding the wreck, capturing Krell soldiers alive for the first time. That victory mattered, not just for morale, but for knowledge. For the first time, humans could study their enemy up close. How they thought, how they moved, and what they feared. The captured Krell didn't speak, but their silence told enough. They weren't used to losing. And now they were. Meanwhile, on the colony of Acheron's Reach, where the Krell had taken ground in the early days, resistance fighters led by a teenage girl named Melina struck back with homemade bombs, stolen weapons, and grit. She and her friends, farmers, mechanics, and students, turned abandoned mines into tunnels of death. They struck at night, vanished by dawn, and painted messages on broken walls. Earth remembers. Her name reached Earth through old radio channels, and Admiral Torres ordered supply drops sent directly to their location. One of the drops contained only one message: "You are not alone." On board the Valkyrie II, the bridge crew watched each battle with clenched jaws and steady eyes. Losses were mounting, but so were victories. Every fallen station gave way to a strike deeper into enemy lines. Every broken ship was salvaged, repurposed, reforged into something meaner. Humanity was not backing down. They were evolving. Even children in underground shelters learned how to reload weapons, repair radios, and deliver messages through collapsing tunnels. No one was useless. Everyone was part of the fight. Commander Kai Voss, after surviving his near-suicidal run through Krell space, returned with stolen enemy tech, strange data cubes glowing with soft purple light. Scientists on Earth worked day and night to crack them open, hoping to find the secret to Krell command structures, or better, weaknesses, and they did. Buried inside the code was a pattern, one that suggested the Krell were not just attacking out of hatred or expansion. They were running from something. The Krell Empire wasn't expanding because they wanted to. It was because they had to. Whatever they feared, it was pushing them toward Earth like a wave. Admiral Torres stared at the data for a long time. "They fired first," she whispered again. "But they were already running." Still, it didn't matter. The war was real, the deaths were real. And Earth would not bow. Not now, not ever. From the shadows of the outer system to the heart of Earth itself, the human response echoed with steel and fire. They were not just surviving. They were winning. The fourth phase of the war began with silence, a cold, dangerous calm that settled over the stars. No attacks came. No fleets moved. It was as if the Krell were pulling back, regrouping, waiting. But humans knew better. This wasn't a retreat. It was the breath before a storm. Deep in the dark beyond Neptune's orbit, hidden in the shadow of a frozen moon, the Krell were building something. Human long-range scouts caught only glimpses, massive energy spikes, strange gravitational waves, brief flashes of silver and violet metal. Whatever it wasn't just another ship. It was a weapon. A new one. On Earth, the skies were filled with ash from fallen stations, but the people did not look down. They looked up, toward the stars, toward the threat, and toward their defenders. Admiral Torres gathered her war council aboard the Valkyrie II, where the atmosphere was tight with tension. Intelligence reports from Kai Voss and his stolen data cubes confirmed it. The Krell were planning a superweapon, something capable of ending Earth in a single strike. They called it the Maw, and it was almost ready. But Torres did not panic. She pointed to the stars and gave new orders. "We go now. We strike before it's born." Across the system, every human fleet was called into motion. Old grudges were put aside. Colonies that once fought over trade routes now shared fuel and supplies. Even pirates answered the call. The stars became highways of fire as hundreds of human ships gathered in orbit. At the heart of it all was Task Force Revenant, with Commander Elias Rourke leading the spearhead. His ship, the Wraith, now armed with stolen Krell cloaking tech, would be the first to breach the enemy's hidden base. Beside him flew Idris Hale in the Iron Storm, its new armor blackened from a dozen battles, and Commander Voss aboard the Whisper, now upgraded to carry experimental EMP weapons. The plan was simple: strike fast, destroy the Maw before it activates, and survive long enough to escape. But no plan ever goes perfectly. As the fleet jumped into Krell space, alarms blared. They had been detected. The trap was already sprung. Dozens of Krell warships uncloaked, surrounding the human task force in a shimmering ring of death. Plasma beams filled the void. Ships exploded in silent bursts of fire and debris. The first wave hit hard, but the humans hit harder. Rorks. Wraith vanished and reappeared behind enemy lines, dropping charges that tore through hulls like paper. Hale led a brutal charge straight into the heart of the enemy formation, his voice calm as he barked orders, weaving between explosions. Voss unleashed his EMPs, frying enemy targeting systems and plunging their formation into chaos. In the middle of it all, Torres watched from the command deck, her hands steady. She did not yell. She simply gave orders and trusted her people. And her people did not disappoint. On board the Wraith, Rourke and his crew broke through the outer ring, reaching visual contact with the Maw. It was massive, a twisted spear of metal and energy, the size of a mountain, pulsing with blue and red light. Drones circled it like hornets. It wasn't just a weapon, it was alive. As they approached, alarms screamed. The Maw began to charge, its core lit up like a sun, gathering power. They had minutes, no more. Rourke transmitted the coordinates. "All ships," he said, voice sharp. "Focus fire. Bring that monster down." The fleet responded. Beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, all aimed at one point. The Maw began to shake under the pressure. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Then came Melina. The girl who had once led rebels on Acheron's Reach now stood on the bridge of a converted cargo ship, leading a squad of resistance fighters who had stolen an old Krell freighter. They charged straight into the Maw's outer ring, carrying an overcharged fusion core stolen weeks earlier. Her last words were calm. "Tell Earth we did something." The freighter crashed into the Maw's charging core, and for a moment, everything went white. The blast ripped through the enemy base like a star being born. The Maw cracked, then collapsed, shattering into glowing debris. The Krell, caught in the shockwave, scattered. The silence returned, but this time it belonged to Earth. The price was heavy, ships lost, friends gone. But the Maw was no more. And the galaxy had just learned something terrifying. Humans don't wait to die. They charge toward death and punch it in the mouth. As the shattered remains of the Maw floated in the black silent space, Earth's defenders didn't celebrate. They mourned. Dozens of ships were gone. Thousands of brave souls like Melina and her crew had given everything. But there was no time to rest. The Krell weren't broken. They were angry. And worse, they were afraid. That fear turned into rage, and within hours the full weight of the Krell Empire came crashing toward Earth's solar system like a tidal wave. Across the stars, the sky lit up with red alerts. Civilian transports were evacuated. Orbital stations prepared for impact. Old war bunkers from the Martian surface to Europa's icy oceans powered up after decades of silence. Earth itself became a fortress. The United Earth Defense Network, the last shield between extinction and survival, was activated at full capacity for the first time in human history. Above the blue planet, thousands of ships took position. Some were sleek and modern. Others were old, patched with scrap and faith. Pilots from every background, military officers, ex-pirates, colonists, even asteroid miners, stood side by side, eyes locked on the stars. At the heart of the defense stood the Valkyrie II, battered but proud, where Admiral Torres stood with her hands behind her back and her gaze hard as steel. Her voice echoed across every comm. "We hold here. No retreat. No surrender. Earth is our last line. If they want us gone, they'll have to dig through the bones of 1 billion fighters." Then came the signal. The Krell arrived not as a fleet, but as a storm. Thousands of ships glowing with unnatural energy filled the void. Their war chants echoed across every open channel. They didn't demand surrender. They wanted fear. But instead of silence, they got laughter. Somewhere in the line, a human pilot chuckled. Then another joined. And another. Before long, it was a wall of quiet grins and sharp smiles. Because humans weren't afraid anymore. They'd been hunted, bombed, betrayed, and nearly wiped out. But they were still here. And now, it was their turn. The battle began with a scream of engines and fire. Krell ships dived like blades, tearing through the outer rings, but the humans fought back with a fury born of desperation and hope. Commander Rourke's Wraith danced between enemy cruisers, dropping mines and guiding missiles like a phantom. Idris Hale led wave after wave of counterstrikes, his squadron carving paths through chaos with surgical precision. Even wounded, his ship Ironstorm refused to fall. From Mars's orbit, experimental railguns fired massive slugs at near-light speed, ripping Krell carriers in half. Earth's moons lit up with defense arrays, launching swarms of drones and energy webs. It was beautiful and terrible. A ballet of destruction painted across the stars. Every human who could fight, fought. On the dark side of Luna, old mining bots were turned into suicide drones. Civilians on orbital farms joined resistance hackers, shutting down enemy drones with viruses, built from ancient Earth code. Someone even reactivated the old AI bishop buried under Antarctica's ice. The Krell were stunned. They had expected a final breath. Instead, they met a rising storm. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, held the line. Every ship destroyed, bought time. Every fallen fighter bought space. And every moment they survived, the stronger their defense grew. Torres directed every move with calm fire, her commands weaving the chaos into a wall of willpower. She didn't ask for glory. She asked for grit. And grit humanity had in endless supply. Just when it seemed the Krell would break through, Earth unleashed its secret weapon. Hidden deep beneath the Pacific Ocean in an underwater trench was Project Leviathan, a mobile battle platform the size of a small city, powered by geothermal energy and old alien tech reverse-engineered over years. It rose from the ocean with a roar, wings of plasma and armor thick as mountains. Its appearance sent shockwaves across the battlefield. With Leviathan entering the fight, human forces pushed forward. It punched holes in enemy lines, its main cannon vaporizing Krell capital ships in a single blast. Morale surged. Fighters screamed battle cries. Children watched from shelters, clutching radios as voices called out victories. Hope, once just, a whisper, now burned like a sun. But victory wasn't yet in their grasp. The Krell had one more move. Their supreme warlord, a creature of shadows and blades known as Jar-Kor, descended in a fortress ship shaped like a broken crown. It was vast, ancient, and hungry. As it entered orbit, the skies darkened, and Earth, scarred and burning, stood ready for the final stand. The sky above Earth was no longer black, it was on fire. Jar-Kor's fortress ship loomed in orbit like a god of death, blocking sunlight, casting shadows over oceans and cities. Its hull cracked with red lightning, and from its sides poured endless Krell reinforcements, living weapons, mechanized beasts, and massive cruisers shaped like jagged blades. It didn't just attack. It crushed everything in its path. But Earth did not fall quietly. Leviathan, still blazing with heat from its first attack, rose again. Admiral Torres, aboard the Valkyrie II, relayed new orders. She had no illusions. Jar-Kor had to be destroyed, or all of humanity would fall. But its ship was shielded, wrapped, in ancient technology that no known weapon could penetrate. Unless they got inside. That was the plan. Commander Rourke, Idris Hale, and a team of elite pilots would punch through the outer defenses in a suicide run, escorting a stealth boarding pod right into the beast's belly. The pod carried a virus codenamed Thorn, a code weapon developed over 20 years by the last surviving AI engineers from the Jupiter colonies. It wasn't just data, it was poison for alien machines. The only problem, to activate it, someone had to stay behind. Rourke volunteered without pause. Hale did too. But Torres refused to lose them both. So she gave the final mission to Rourke, and Hale would lead the escape squad. The world watched as the operation began. Fighters screamed toward the fortress like sparks thrown into a storm. Flak tore the air apart. One by one, ships went dark. But Rourke made it. Smoke trailing from his ship, half of his systems failing, he rammed through the final shield and launched the pod. It vanished into the darkness. Inside, he took control of the virus terminal and smiled to himself, even as alarms rang and oxygen dropped. Outside, the battle grew worse. Leviathan fired its last shot, destroying 3 Krell destroyers before its systems failed, and it sank back into the ocean. Earth's last orbital platform exploded, lighting up the sky like a second sun. But then something changed. Jarkor's ship shuddered, its shields glitched. A low groan echoed across the battlefield. Then fire. Thorn activated. And for the first time in recorded history, a Krell fortress screamed. It was no longer a ship. It became a cage of chaos. Systems failed. Weapons turned on each other. Its own ships crashed into its hull. The virus tore through its AI core like wildfire. Rourke, inside, whispered something only the Valkyrie 2 heard. "It's our turn." And then silence. A light blinked. The fortress exploded, not from outside, but from within. A chain reaction fueled by its own energy turned the sky into a hurricane of red. Jarkor died in fire. His legacy turned to ash. Earth's defenders, stunned, stared at the blast. Then the cheers began. Across ships, stations, bunkers, laughter, tears, victory. Hale screamed in joy. Torres sank into her chair, hands shaking. They had done it. Humanity had stood on the edge of extinction and clawed its way back with blood, grit, and impossible courage. But the cost was heavy. Thousands were gone. The Leviathan was dead. And Rourke, his signal, never came back. In a crater of silence, his name became legend. On Earth, children would grow up learning about the day humans grinned at death and said, "Our turn." The day the stars burned, and they didn't blink. The day the galaxy learned what it meant to push Earth too far. The war was over, but the stars still flickered with the memory of fire. Ashes of Krell ships drifted in orbit like dark snow, silent and broken. Earth, though bruised and scarred, still turned beneath them, alive. The skies no longer roared with battle. Instead, there was peace, the kind bought with sacrifice and stubborn will. Across the world, people emerged from shelters. Families hugged under open skies. Cities began to light up again, though some remained dark, rebuilding from rubble. The oceans calmed where Leviathan had once risen. Its last roar was now part of history, a tale passed from voice to voice like a sacred fire. Above all, one name echoed everywhere: Commander Rourke. No body was ever found. No signal answered. But all knew what he had done. His face, once hidden behind a visor, now stood on memorials, statues, and classroom walls. Children would grow up learning not only how he died, but how he lived. Brave, defiant, human. Admiral Torres stood alone at Earth's new orbital defense station, now under reconstruction. She looked out the window, sipping bitter coffee, her shoulders heavy but proud. Behind her, holograms listed casualties, damaged fleets, and repair schedules. Yet for the first time in months, the alerts were quiet. No enemy signals. No more screaming stars. Idris Hale, scarred but alive, entered the command deck. He limped from injuries that would never fully heal, but he smiled with the calm of someone who had faced the end and walked away. He saluted. "They're calling it the Battle of Earth," he said softly. "But to us, it was just Tuesday." Torres smiled faintly. "Let them name it whatever gives them courage," she replied. "We'll remember the truth." The Krell were gone, their empire shattered by one world they thought weak. News spread across the galaxy. Alien empires that once watched humanity with suspicion now sent messages of respect, offers of trade, and even apologies. For the first time, Earth wasn't just a stubborn planet on the edge of space. It was a power, not because of wealth or ancient tech, but because its people refused to kneel. Across human colonies, from the floating cities on Venus to the mining domes on Ganymede, survivors lit candles and rang bells. Ships returned to forgotten outposts, bringing medicine, power, and hope. Humanity had nearly been erased, but now it spread again. Wiser, stronger, united. A memorial stood in New Geneva, a black stone tower carved with every name lost in the war. At its base, a small plaque bore Rourke's last words. "It's our turn." People came from across the solar system to read it. Veterans wept. Children touched the stone in wonder. And somewhere above them, stars blinked like eyes watching from far away. The galaxy had changed. Other species took note. Not all were allies. Some feared Earth more than ever, but none dared fire the first shot again, because they knew what followed. They remembered the day the humans smiled in the face of doom. They remembered how a planet fought back with nothing but rusted ships, stubborn grit, and hearts that refused to stop beating. They remembered Earth's answer. Our turn. Life moved forward. Factories turned from war machines to rebuilding tools. Pilots once trained for battle now flew missions to replant forests scorched in orbital fire. AI once built for destruction now helped teach, build, and heal. Humanity didn't forget the war, but it didn't become its prisoner either. They carried the pain forward and used it to shape something better. One morning, Torres looked up from her desk and smiled. Outside her window, a ship launched toward a new star system. Its name was Rourke's Hope. It carried explorers, scientists, and builders, no guns, just dreams. Humanity wasn't done fighting, but it was ready to grow again. And somewhere in that endless sea of stars, Earth was no longer alone. It had earned its place, not by being the strongest, not by having the best weapons, but by being the species that, when pushed to the edge, smiled and fought back harder.